Now, in this lesson, I would like to cover a bit more context as to what we do specifically in Year 12 and how English fits into the HSC framework. Surprisingly, I find that a lot of Year 12 students go into Year 12 without knowing what they will be covering. So, no matter what year you are in, knowing this will be very helpful because it's always better to understand the holistic picture before we move into the fine details. Now, currently, there are two papers for both the English Standard and Advanced courses called Paper 1 and Paper 2. English is the only two-unit subject that has two exams for the HSC that is split over 2 days. Paper 1 is called Text and Human Experiences, and Paper 2 covers what we call modules. There are 3 modules called Module A, Module B, and Module C. As you may be aware, these 4 components, Text and Human Experiences, Mod A, Mod B, and Mod C, are usually covered over the 4 terms, with the exception of Mod C, which you may be doing concurrently with any of the modules depending on your school. Usually schools opt to do Mod C with Mod B. Now, up until very recently, Paper 1 and Paper 2 were 2-hour exams that were both split into 3 sections. For Paper 1, there used to be a comprehension, creative writing, and essay component, and for Paper 2, there used to be 3 essay components for each of the modules. What's changed is that Paper 1 is now a 1.5-hour exam, while Paper 2 remains to be a 2-hour exam. Paper 1 now only has a comprehension and an essay component, while Paper 2 covers all the modules, so there are 2 essays for Module A and B, and a new component called the Craft of Writing for Module C. Now, this means that for Paper 1, you are expected to do each section in 45 minutes, while in Paper 2, you are expected to do each section in 40 minutes. What's interesting here is that you'll see that essays make up the majority of the assessments. There are 1, 2, 3 essays out of the 5 components, so 60% of the English paper are going to be essays. So we'll go through essay writing in detail over the next couple of lessons, as it's a very important component for your HSC. Now, I'd like to go through the main differences between Text and Human Experiences and modules because a lot of students struggle with actually understanding the differences between the two when they first start the HSC. So, with Text and Human Experiences, this is what we call a conceptual study because the focus is on a concept which is currently called Text and Human Experiences. The concept that we used to study before were concepts such as discoveries, belonging, and journey. And if you're currently in Year 10 or below, you might be studying other various concepts such as power. Now, we study this concept by looking at the different ideas that may fall within the concept. So we have ideas 1, 2, and 3. And we explore these ideas through different texts. So with conceptual studies like Text and Human Experiences, the texts are used as mere examples to evidence the ideas in our exploration of the overarching concept. On the other hand, although each Module A, B, and C are different and have their own nuances, there is a shared commonality between 2 of these 3 modules for Module A and Module B. The thing that's common between these 2 modules is that the focus is on the text or texts. So, unlike conceptual essays where the texts are used as mere examples to explore our understanding of a concept, the texts that you study in Mod A and B are the actual focus of these modules. Beneath each of these modules, you'll study different ideas that focus on different things depending on whether it's Module A or Module B. So let's go through a little more detail about the differences between each module. Here I'll give you a very high level understanding of each module, and later I'll upload another lesson on each of these modules and their tricks and traps. First, Module A is a module called Textual Conversations, and this is essentially what we call a comparative study, where we explore 2 texts by looking at their resonance and dissonance, which are just fancy words for similarities and differences. Now, I'm not going to decipher the key points and terminologies in these modules in detail in this particular lesson, but to keep this short, what we're trying to do here is that we're trying to look at the interrelationship between contexts, ideas, and values. The context shapes the ideas from which we extract the values, and the values reflect the context. So, in Module A, you may be studying 2 different texts that were written in different contexts but explored similar ideas, and you might find that they come to different positions in respect of the exploration of these ideas or share certain similarities. Interestingly, One thing that's new with Mod A is that you'll now also need to consider how narratives can be appropriated, reimagined, or reconceptualized for new audiences. Practically what this means is that a lot of the prescribed texts that you will now study will have a direct correlation between the two texts like King Richard III and Looking for Richard, where one text could be a modern adaptation of the original text. Traditionally for Mod A, there didn't need to be a direct link between the texts except for their perhaps exploration of similar ideas, but what you'll now find is that a lot of the prescribed texts for Module A have direct correlations. Next we have Module B. Now, Module B is called Critical Study of Literature, and as the title suggests, this is what we call a critical study, and this is where we look at a text critically by looking at the distinctive qualities of the text and notions of textual integrity. Now, textual integrity is just a fancy word to mean the unity of a text or how everything comes together to create a whole, whether it be through the use of form and language. Now, what's more important here is that in this module, we need to develop our own interpretation of the text with a particular perspective, which is sort of like looking at a text with a particular lens. What we really need to demonstrate here is that we need to show a deeper understanding of the text through critical perspectives. Depending on how you look at a text, you'll see that different meanings and ideas may be drawn. So you'll need to demonstrate your own understanding of the text with your own interpretations. So when we look at the text, let's say the play Hamlet by William Shakespeare, which for full disclosure is unfortunately no longer part of the Module B prescribed text list, we could adopt a particular view or perspective, whether that be looking at Hamlet in light of the study of moral corruption, or if you'd like, you could even take a postmodern or feminist perspective. So this module is quite challenging, but can be very interesting because this is the only module where we look at a text in and of itself. Now, Module C is called The Craft of Writing, and this particular module is a very new elective that they have introduced with the recent changes to the HSC's English syllabus. The rationale for this module is that Nesta wanted students to extend their repertoire of classroom writing beyond just analytical essays. So they wanted to encourage students to engage with a variety of writing experiences for a range of audiences and purposes. This is perhaps the reason why they scrapped the creative writing component in Paper 1, so that you could explore writing in different text types beyond just creative writing. Having said that, creative writing isn't completely gone because in this module, you could write a persuasive, imaginative, or discursive text. So in this module, you'll first study at least 2 short prescribed texts in class to see how different composers use language creatively and imaginatively for their intended purpose. Now, after you've analysed a prescribed text, you'll need to work on your own writing and compose a piece of persuasive, imaginative, or discursive text with a reflection component where you'll need to explain how your prescribed texts have influenced your writing style. As you may tell, this is very similar to the Year 11 elective called Reading to Write. So this pretty much sums up what's covered in HSC English, and hopefully you'll now have a good grasp as to what you'll be studying throughout the year. In our next lesson, we'll be covering essay writing.